Let's talk about the merge node. The merge node is located in the record ops palette. This node allows you to take multiple data files and combine them into a single data file containing all or some of the fields. This is a useful operation when you want to merge data from different sources. For example, you may have account data and you want to combine it with demographic data. In this example, the table on the left has account information. The table on the right has account information and also some demographic and feature information as well, as these data files have now been merged. Let's take a look at the merge node. The merge node allows you to take multiple data sets and create a single data set containing all or some of the fields. This is a useful operation if you want to merge data from different sources. For example, you may have hospital information as well as patient satisfaction information, and you want to bring all this information together for the same people. Or you may have data from one year followed by data for those same customers for the following year, and you want to see how they've changed over time. So those might be situations when you want to use the merge node. Now what we're going to do here is, before we bring the merge node onto the canvas, we're going to take a closer look at our data. So we have three different data files here. We're going to combine all three of them using the merge node. The first data set that we have is the monthly statements. That's followed by an aggregate node where some of the data has been aggregated. Let's run the table so we can take a closer look at that data. So we have the account number, and then we have the call information. How many calls were dropped, how many calls were international calls, etc. So this is all account information based on the monthly statements that have now been aggregated. Notice that we have a total of 10,000 records. We'll close out of this window. Now let's connect the customer data to the table, and we're going to run that to take a closer look at that data. Here again we have account information, but this time we can see that we have information on the features that people have on their different phones. What region they're in, if they have the push-to-talk feature, if they have the end feature, etc. So again, notice that we happen to have 10,000 records in this example. Okay, but you can see that it's clearly different information. One, we have monthly statement information. The next one, we have information on the person's features in terms of what they've signed up for. We'll close out of this window. Now we're going to merge this information using the merge node. So we're going to go down to the record ops palette. We're going to bring the merge node onto the canvas, and we're going to connect the aggregate node to the merge node. We're then going to bring the customer information and connect that to the merge node as well. Let's edit the merge node. Now there are three ways in which you can merge information. The default is that you can merge based on order. If you use that option, what that means is that you're merging all of your data based on the order in which your cases are presented. So that means that whoever you have in the first row in data set number 1 better be that same person that you have in the first row in data set number 2, because that information is going to be combined. Now, the moment you run out of people in one of the data sets, whichever data set happens to be smaller, at that point, the merge ends. I generally do not recommend this option because you may have sorted your data differently. You may have different numbers of people in your data set. It gets a little tricky, so I generally would not recommend that. I'm going to choose the keys option, which is the option that I would typically use and typically would recommend. Now, when you merge based on keys, it means that you have some kind of ID variable, maybe a customer ID variable, maybe an account ID variable, things like that. These variables or fields appear in all of your files. So you use these to then combine your data. Now you could use one field or you can use a combination of fields. If there are any fields that appear in all of the files that you're combining, they would appear in the possible keys box. Here we only have one key or one variable that appears in both of the data sets. That's the one we're going to choose. We're going to choose the field account. Now, before I move on, I want to mention that there is a third way in which you can merge your data. You can merge your data based on condition. Basically, you specify a condition that needs to be satisfied for the merge to take place. You can build that condition directly right within the node, or you can use the expression builder. Like I said, we're going to use keys in this example. Now, there happen to be 4 ways in which you can merge your data when you're using keys. The default is that you're going to include only matching records. That would be the inner join. What that means is that you would only include in the final data set people that appeared in data set 1 and in data set number 2. And actually in all of your data sets, because you can merge as many data sets as you'd like. The second option is that you can include matching and non-matching records. That would be the full outer join. In that case, what you would be combining is everybody, regardless of whether they appeared in all of the data sets or in just one data set. What we're going to do here is we're going to just choose a default option, include only matching records, the inner join. I'll talk about the other options in a little bit. We'll click OK. Now we're connecting the merge node over to our table, and we're going to run the table. Notice now that we have 13 fields. We have a total of 10,000 records. Same 10,000 records that we had in the other data sets, in both data sets. Notice that we have the monthly statement information, and then we also have information on the features that these different customers have. So we've combined the information from both of these different data sets. We'll close out of this window, and let's take a look at our final file. We're going to connect the churn file over to a table. We'll run the table. Now this also has account information, but this gives us information as to whether they're current customers or customers that we've already lost, and what their start date was and their end date. Okay, so we're going to combine this information as well. Notice that we only have 1,724 records. We'll close out of this window. And what we're going to do here is we're going to bring another merge node onto the canvas. We're going to connect the first merge node to the second merge node. And then we're going to connect the churn data set to the merge node as well. Let's edit the second merge node. Again, we're going to merge based on keys. Again, we're going to choose the only possible key that we have, which is the account data set. Now let's look at the other options that we have here for merging when you're using keys. You could include matching and selected non-matching records. That would be the partial outer join. That's the option we're going to use here. So we're going to select that option. I'll click on the select button. And what that does now is whatever data set, and granted we're only choosing we only have 2 data sets here. Whatever data set happens to have a check next to it, and you can choose more than one, you're going to bring over everybody in that data set. And then the data sets that do not have a check next to them, you're only going to bring over those people for which they match with the data sets that have the complete check. So we're going to choose the tell churn data set. We're going to deselect the other option. That means that we're going to have those 1,724 people that were in the tell churn data set. Their data is going to appear in the final data set, and then whatever information happens to match from the other data sets, that's going to be combined as well. We'll click OK. And before we do the merge, I'm just going to mention the last option. The last option is to include records in the first data set not matching any of the others. That's also known as the anti-join. So there you're basically combining anybody that appeared in the first data set that does not appear in any of the other data sets. All right, we'll click OK. We'll run the table. And notice that we now have 17 fields. We have 1,724 records. Notice that we have data that came from all of those different files, including the last file that we just looked at, which had the start date and end date information. So we'll close out of this window. Now, let's look at some of the other options that you have within the merge node. We'll edit the merge node. And we looked at the merge tab already, but we can click on the inputs tab. The inputs tab just lets you know how many fields are in each one of the different data sets that you're going to be combining. The filter tab allows you to remove or rename any fields that you don't want to actually see in the final data set. And finally, the optimization tab just lets you be more efficient so that if you have one data set that's relatively large, you could specify that and then Modeler can run more efficiently. Or if some of the data has already been sorted, you can let Modeler know about that as well, and again, it'll run more efficiently. I'll click OK. So that's an example of how you can use the merge node to combine different pieces of information into one final data set.